Hello, ghosties. You're listening to Not My Ghost.
Not My Problem. I'm Kelly.
And I'm Jen.
Whether you're a skeptic, a true believer, or somewhere in between, join us for a journey into the unknown.
Because remember, when it comes to the paranormal, it may not be our problem.
But it's certainly someone's problem. Jen.
Yes.
Last week, my husband and Katie and I went to Antietam and stayed at a haunted inn.
Ooh, fun.
Yes. Now, while we didn't get any activity at the haunted inn, there was, by the way, this place is surrounded by cemeteries, almost on all sides.
Spooky.
It's like right in the middle of different cemeteries. We went out to some of the cemeteries, and I had opened the ghost app we have on the phone. We opened the EVP section, which isn't really an EVP.
Yeah.
EVP is when you record something, but it's more like an Ovilus where it can pick a word.
Right.
So we were walking through and I had asked some questions. One of the questions I asked was, "What is your name?" And it didn't say anything. And I said, "What day did you die?" And it didn't say anything. And then it waited a long time and then said, "Tombstone." And I took that as, stop asking questions, dumbass. Just read the tombstone.
Read the fucking tombstone. Come on. Don't make me. Do you know how hard it is for me to push all this energy through to answer these questions? And you want to know what is right in front of you?
Right. We also went on a self-guided tour around the battlefield. We got some interesting little tidbits. We were at the church, the first stop on the self-guided tour, it's called the Dunkers Church. And it got that name because of how they baptize people. They completely immersed people in water.
I was thinking it got that way because that's where all the NBA players went to church.
No, there wasn't an NBA back then.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe it was just the kids that like to dunk.
Like 1800s.
Okay, well, maybe they've renamed it in the future. I don't know.
It's a German church. It was the Church of the German Brethren, and they're very strict. So we sit down on these pews in this very empty, echoey church, and I just start asking questions. And I said, "What is your name?" And I got Toby. And I thought, well, that was interesting. That was a direct response.
Yeah.
Like a name after saying that. But I'm always skeptical of the apps on your phone because it could listen to what you're saying.
Absolutely.
But I feel like if that was the case, it would have done it. It would do it more consistently.
Exactly. Because sometimes you can ask it questions and it gives you the most off the wall answers that make no sense.
Right. Katie and I started teasing Nick about something, and the voice came through and said, "Chill." Nick gets up and he's like, "That's right." And he walks to the front of the church, like where the preacher would stand. And he's standing behind the little desk they have there. He's like, "That's right. Stop, teasing me." And then it said, "Lead." And I was like, it's such a misogynistic joke or ghost. Joke and ghost.
Yeah.
Like, oh, he's the man. He must lead. We asked some questions about the church. This church was a pacifist church, and it was a part of the bloodiest battle of the Civil War.
Fun.
We asked about the building and the church and what it meant to them, and I got the word sacred.
Oh.
Yeah. We then start asking it different questions about what was going on during the time. While we were in this church, I was talking to Katie and Nick about how I downloaded the information for the self-guided tour. We ask a bunch of questions, and finally the ghost says, "Internet." Again, stop asking me questions and listen to the shit you downloaded from the internet. That was very interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah, we're at the Antietam National Cemetery. I was by myself, and I was asking questions. I wasn't getting anything. I finally said, "I'm going to turn the app off now, so if there's anything that you want to say, this is the time to say it. And I got the word allow. And I wasn't sure what that meant. And I was like, yes, I'm allowing you to speak. And then it got the word don't. And then I got the word forget.
Huh.
And I made sure to let any spirits there know that we do not forget the sacrifice they made.
Yes.
Fighting for the Union, fighting for the U.S.
Right.
and the country. So
Right.
I assured the spirits that we did not forget them. By the way, well into this is our scripted, unscripted banter part.
Yes. Yes, it is. Yes, this is our scripted, unscripted banter.
I do have a question for you.
Yay. What's your question?
If you could summon one ghost, demon, or spirit for a night of answers, who would it be and what would you ask them?
John Benet Ramsey, and I would ask them who killed her.
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go a little, it says ghost, demon, or spirit. So I'm going to go with God, maybe the Holy Spirit.
There you go.
I want to ask questions like, what's up with childhood cancer?
Yeah. Pedophiles.
Why'd
you make them?
Yeah. Why did children, right. Why don't you stop them?
Yeah, lots of good questions. I'm selfish, and that's my true crime case that when anyone ever asks, if you could go back in time, what would you do? That's the one. So that was my first initial thought. If I really think about it, I would probably say like a family member, my grandmother, someone like that I could talk to again.
Right. I mean, I lost my dad, but I don't have any burning questions to ask him. Now, as an atheist, I don't even think that there would be a God there to answer the question.
Right. So you would just waste your free pass.
No, it would at least be an experiment if something was there.
That's true. And then you would find out for sure if there wasn't.
Right. But I would ask those questions like, why does somebody starve every 13 seconds in this world?
Yeah.
When we have the ability to feed them.
Look at you getting
why
all philosophical.
Why do you care?
Philosophical. Philosophical. I haven't finished my coffee yet, Kelly.
Why do you care what I'm doing in my own bedroom? Do you really care that much about if somebody touches their own goddamn body? Come on.
I honestly think if there is any type of higher power that they don't give a fuck. That they don't
give a fuck at all?
No. That they're not like this evil person watching over, judging you for being gay or whatever else that you'd get judged for. I don't think that exists personally.
Well, same.
You don't believe any of it exists, but
yeah. But if I had the chance to ask, I tell you what, if I wasn't going to waste it, I would bring back my grandmother and I would ask her who my grandfather is.
Oh, I thought you were going to say bring back your grandmother and tell her what a bitch she was.
Oh, that's the other grandmother.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
That was my mom's mom. No, my dad's mom, I was very close with. She died when I was very young.
Oh, okay.
But we don't know if my grandfather was my grandfather or if his brother was my grandfather.
That's an interesting tale.
There's no people left to test DNA wise.
Oh.
I would definitely want to answer to that.
How scandalous.
I know.
Especially for that time. Like your grandmother slept with her husband and his brother.
My grandmother had a baby that died during birth, and it was a boy. I would also ask her what she was going to name him, if it was the same name she gave my father eventually. Then she had my Aunt Lucy, who was mentally handicapped, and she did say she was going to have a quote unquote, and this is way back when speak, normal child any way she could. And then that's when my grandfather's brother moved in with them.
Interesting.
Who my father and my aunt look so much more like my grandfather's brother than the guy that I was raised with my grandfather. Now they were brothers, so it is genetically possible, but.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You have all kinds of fun stories.
I do. I've lived an interesting life.
Wow. And I've been your friend for a long time, and that's the first I'm hearing about that one.
Well, you don't usually lead with grandma was a whore.
That's fair.
I don't like that word. I don't think women are whores.
No. We were pretty sure that when we do the math, that my grandmother was pregnant with my uncle when she got married.
Right.
Back in the day at 19.
The only reason I would use the word whore is because she was married and then she slept with his brother.
That's fair. My grandmother just slept with her fiance prior to actually getting married, which, back in the day, that was questionable, but now it's pretty par for the course. In fact, people are probably looking at you that you might be a little strange if you don't, because you got to know what you're getting into, right?
I could not imagine I feel for people that are raised that they have to be virgins when they get married, and then they get married and they find out they're not sexually compatible at all.
Yeah.
I know somebody that found out they were asexual after they got married, and that's devastating for your partner.
Yeah, absolutely. And then usually people that believe in that also don't believe in divorce. So you're just kind of stuck.
Right. Yeah.
No, you got to tap that first.
That sucks. Yeah.
Okay.
Tap it often.
Let's get into our story. We've had a lot of unscripted banter today.
Okay. Today, we are taking you behind the scenes of one of the most terrifying stories ever put to film.
Ooh.
A haunting in Connecticut. You might remember the creepy ghost-filled movie with all the jump scares. But did you know it was based on a real-life haunting? I do want to preface this by saying I do know the family's real name, but the sources I have found, most of them, use all fake names for them. And the interviews of them, they were completely blacked out. You couldn't see or identify their face at all.
Okay.
So out of respect for the family, I will not be using their actual names.
Good idea.
In 1986, the Parker family moved into a charming old house in Southington, Connecticut, only to discover that it was once a funeral home. What followed was a series of terrifying events that turned their lives into a living nightmare, full of dark apparitions, unexplained noises, and encounters that left the family questioning their sanity. In this episode, we're uncovering the true story behind the movie. We'll dive into the Parkers' real-life experiences, the disturbing history of the house, and the investigations that brought in famed demonologist Ed and Lorraine Warren. So turn down the lights, get comfortable, and join us as we separate fact from fiction in one of America's most infamous hauntings. But first, I have some fun facts and some scary facts about Connecticut.
Let's go.
Right? Connecticut is the birthplace of the first hamburger, which was served in 1895 at Lewis's Lunch in New Haven. The original recipe is still served today. No ketchup allowed.
That's awful. I'd be so pissed.
They put mustard on it when they first invented it, and they do not allow. You can't ask for ketchup in that place. You'll get quite yelled at.
That's kind of like Thrasher's Fries in Ocean City.
Kind of like it how?
Like they with no ketchup. They don't have ketchup at Thrasher's Fries.
No, they have the vinegar.
Yeah. I remember the first time that I ever went and got Thrasher's Fries, like as an adult. And I went up and asked for ketchup and they didn't have it. So then I went over to like across the boardwalk to the dough roller and asked for ketchup. Yeah. Because I'm like, I want ketchup.
I was just going to say, was it the dough roller?
It was the dough roller. Yes, it was. But it's funny. I have actually never seen a haunting in Connecticut prior to us deciding to do it for this episode. And then I watched it.
Pretty interesting.
It is. I'm looking forward to hearing about the true story.
But first, we're going to get back to our fun facts.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm ADHD brain. Right. It's going everywhere.
Sometimes we're like two squirrels running around. Yeah. In 1878, the first telephone book was published in New Haven. It contained only 50 names and no numbers because there were no phone numbers yet, just operators.
Interesting.
The famous author Mark Twain lived in Hartford, Connecticut, where he wrote classics like The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Two
books I was forced to read in middle or high school. I don't remember.
His house is still there and it's got filled with secret passages and everything, and it's now a museum.
Fun. I want to go.
Yeah. Me too. We got a lot of places we got to get to.
We do. We need more Patreon donors so we can travel and bring you all the spooks from the road.
Yes. Now we're going to get into some scary facts.
Ooh, bring on the scary.
This park in East Haddam gets its name for its eerie legends. It's called Devil's Hop Yard State Park.
Hop Yard. Does it have beer?
Does not specify.
Okay.
It's got spirits, though. Oh, there's my joke. It was dumb. It includes tales of Satan himself dancing on its stone bridge, leaving behind hoof prints. The rushing waterfalls and mysterious rock formation adds to the park's creepy atmosphere. In 1881, The small town of Brookfield was rocked by a murder case that became known as the Devil Made Me Do It trial.
Yes, I've heard of that.
It's a movie, too.
Oh, that's probably why it sounds familiar.
It's part of the Conjuring movies.
Oh, okay.
So this was the first known case in the U.S. where demonic possession was used as a defense. The case was investigated by Ed and Lorraine Warren, who claimed the killer, Arnie Johnson, was possessed by a demon that had previously terrorized a young boy in the town.
Yes, I think I've seen this more recently on like a documentary or like one of those paranormal shows where they talk about it, but I don't think I've ever seen the movie.
There's one on Discovery.
That's probably the one I've seen then.
Discovery Plus.
Because it's probably also on HBO Max if it's on Discovery.
Yeah. Then we have Dudleytown, the village of the damned.
I should live there.
Dudleytown, a ghost town in the woods of Cornwall, is often called the most haunted place in Connecticut. Cursed with tales of madness, suicide, and strange disappearances. Dudleytown has been abandoned for centuries and is now off limits due to its haunted reputation. Legend has it that anyone who enters this town is met with misfortune and eerie encounters.
It's off limits due to its haunted reputation. That's when they should charge a fee to get in.
Right.
Come on.
Usually when we do these episodes, we start with a little bit of history and then we jump into ghost stories. This is all history, ghost stories, right melded together.
Okay, let's go.
We're just going to jump right into it.
Perfect.
All right. Karen and Ed Parker's oldest child, Paul, was diagnosed with cancer at 14 years old.
Aww.
The doctors gave Paul 6 weeks to live.
Oh, my God.
Unless radical new treatments could put him in remission. Karen's obviously devastated by this news.
Yeah.
She didn't think that Paul would survive the harsh treatments because they carried their own risks. He was withering away during the treatments in his size and his strength.
Aww.
These treatments that are supposed to cure him, she's just watching her son wither away, and she just did not believe he was going to survive this.
Yeah.
The Parker family lived in upstate New York, but they had to travel 300 miles to a hospital in Connecticut for his treatments. Karen had a daily commute of 8 hours to get Paul to his treatments.
Fuck that.
Yeah, leaving her unable to care for the rest of her family. These long drives took a toll on Paul, so they decided they needed to move to Connecticut. But it was difficult because her husband worked in upstate New York.
Right.
Karen had trouble finding someone that would rent to her because she had 4 kids. But despite the difficulty, she persisted. That's when she happened upon another house for rent in the area. It was a huge, beautiful, and newly renovated house. The more she looked, the more she liked the house. And it was only minutes from the hospital.
Convenient.
It only had 2 bedrooms upstairs, and she needed more. So she was hoping the basement would have enough space in it where she could have bedrooms for her boys.
Never smart. Don't put your kids in the basement. Never works out for anybody.
She went down, on the stairs, to walk down the stairs to the basement to see if there was enough room. But she could only kind of peek because there was all kinds of construction going on. They were still working on the basement at the time that she looked at the house.
Okay.
But it was big enough, so she was happy with that, and she just went back upstairs. She contacted the property manager and was shocked to find this huge, gorgeous home was in her budget. Again, as we always say,
if it's too good to be true, there's probably been a murder there.
I personally would be sign me up.
Oh, me too. I just want to know about it. That's my only thing. Don't leave me surprised. I don't want to move in and then find out. I want to move in knowing that it's haunted.
Right.
That's actually a selling point for me. I sent you that video on Instagram the other day about having a Ghostzilla or something where they actually advertise how wonderful the house is, but then also advertise all the spirits that go along with it. I would shop on that.
They don't do that because they think that people won't buy the house, but I think they'd be shocked at how many people were interested in the house because of it.
Absolutely.
Karen and her husband Ed started moving things into their new home. This is when Ed got his first look at the house. He was in upstate New York when she found it. He was waiting for a job transfer to come through, so he was home on the weekends, but gone Monday through Friday up in upstate New York. They went down to the basement to see the finished work, and they saw a room that Karen hadn't seen before. Upon entering the room, they found an embalming table along with autopsy equipment.
Why would the renter leave that in the house, or the landlord?
It is weird, but it gets weirder. Then they discovered the body cooler.
Ugh.
Karen was very upset, and she did not think they could live there. When Ed calmed her mind and reminded her that nobody actually died in the house, they were just brought there after they passed. Plus, they had used every penny they had to move in and pay the first month's rent on the house. So they really didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Given Paul's illness and how close he was to death, they agreed they would hide the home's past from their children. They didn't want Paul thinking about death or, more importantly, his death at all.
That's understandable at that time.
Right. They realized it would be difficult to hide it from the kids, considering the large cemetery right next to the home. The realtor did come out and removed the embalming equipment.
Thank you.
But get this, left the table, the body cooler, and other items she thought the family could use.
Oh.
I'm sorry, what?
I don't care how many times you clean the body cooler. I'm not putting anything in there to cool it. Like, I'm just not.
Oh, we'll get there.
I'm not going to use it as a refrigerator.
My husband and I had a heated debate about this.
I know where Nick lies on that, and I know where you lie on that. Nick is practical, and he's like, well, it's refrigerator space. Why would we not use it?
Exactly.
And you are like me and are like, that's disgusting. There were dead bodies in there. Right. Yeah. It's not even like a ghost spooky thing. It's like just a hygienic thing. There were dead bodies in that cooler.
To which he said, but they were frozen.
Oh, it doesn't make it any better. They were dead. Even if there were live bodies laying in there, I don't want someone's bodily juices mixing with my greens and vegetables.
I'm with you.
Now, maybe drinks. Maybe. Possibly. If I put it like maybe drinks, like if I put like some shelves, like I don't know how big the body cooler is, but put some shelves so they don't ever actually touch the actual cooler. Like you get some shelving units that you put in there, and then you can put like beer or soda.
Oh, it came with shelves.
Oh, okay. But
for the bodies.
But no, I'm talking about like smaller shelves, like drink size shelves. So again, it doesn't touch anything that a body once touched. Possibly.
Maybe. I'm still not sold.
I could totally see it as a beer cooler.
Okay, so Karen hoped that Paul would feel at home in the new house. You know, they had to uproot the family. At this point, though, it's just Karen and Paul at the house. Ed is like kind of helping move some stuff in.
Okay.
Some boxes.
Where are the other kids?
They're still up in upstate New York.
With who, though, if the parents are there?
With the dad.
But the dad was still helping to move stuff in.
I assume that they're with relatives.
Okay. I just have to know. Make sure that they're not like abandoning their children, leaving them by themselves.
No.
Okay.
Although I don't think they're the best parents, and we'll get there.
Okay.
One day when they first got there, Paul was just looking around the house while Karen was cleaning up before they moved any of the furniture in. As she was mopping in the kitchen, she goes over, she fills up this bucket with hot soapy water. She puts the mop in it. She starts mopping the kitchen. She looks down and the bucket is filled with blood and she's pushing it around the floor. Now, I thought this was going the route of, and then she looked up and looked down and it was just water.
Yeah.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Oh my God. Because that's what happens in all horror movies. Like she's looking and then suddenly it's blood and she like freaks out and blinks and then it's water again. And then they think they're going crazy.
It's just red all over the floor now. There was still the previous owners had a maid that would come in and clean, and she was still there helping the family out. So she is helping the mom, like with paper towels, like get all of this stuff up off of the floor.
How did it become blood?
I don't know. Like, is that in your plumbing?
Right, but you would think if you're pouring it from the sink, you then have to carry it over to the ground and set it down. If it was fucking red, you would notice it the second it comes out of the sink. You wouldn't start mopping your floor. So
I'm sure they can't prove that it was blood, but that's what it looked like to her. The only thing I can think of is there was something on that floor. There was some kind of a chemical reaction that she didn't notice at first.
Yeah.
She put it on the floor. She put the mop back in the bucket. That turned the water red, and then it ended up pushing around.
I could see that. Or if she was just completely oblivious. I've worked in Baltimore City public schools, and I know what the water looked like that came out of those faucets. And maybe not full-blown blood, but definitely discolored. Yeah. So maybe if you weren't paying attention, I guess if you put the soap in the bucket first and then turned the faucet on and walked away while it was filling and then turned it off,
right,
then the suds would be at the top, so you wouldn't be able to see the color of the water.
Maybe.
So if it was like rusted, discolored, red, whatever, she probably didn't see it until she began mopping.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a possibility.
Still disgusting.
At the same time she's mopping the floor, Paul was walking down the basement for the first time. He felt an icy chill in the air, and he felt as if he was being watched by someone. In all of the stuff that I saw, Paul was never directly interviewed. Okay. It seemed as if Paul definitely just, this is behind him and that's it.
Yeah.
But they did interview the mother, the brother, and then the mother's niece, and I think the sister. I'm assuming that they all filled in all of this information because they know what Paul felt.
Exactly. He told them, so they were filling it in.
This is the most information that was out there. So.
Okay.
He walked back upstairs and closed the basement door behind him. And as he was walking away, the basement door opened on its own. He told his mother they needed to leave the house and they could not stay there. What's worse is as the door was opening, Paul heard a voice call out his name.
Creepy.
Yeah. Karen tried to reassure him, but she felt as if he was so close to death that he could sense the house's past. And Paul was just terrified.
Yeah. Now, in the movie, they had basically pointed out that due to the experimental treatment that he was getting for his cancer, that he could possibly experience hallucinations. Just any of that was...
We'll get there.
Okay.
Given that this house was an old funeral home, they had a lot of like Catholic things in the house. Okay. Right by the front door, they had a bowl where they would keep holy water in with a crucifix above it.
Did it still have holy water in it?
No, the family just used the bowl to throw their keys in when they would come in the house.
Holy keys. That's one way to protect yourself while you're driving.
Right. There's crucifixes all over the house. There's a lot of Catholic imagery. Since the family was Catholic, Karen brought Paul to a priest, the same priest that married her and Ed, to have him do a healing on Paul. Not too long later, his sister Connie and his brothers Mark and Robbie moved in. So this all happens at the same time. They go to the priest to get a healing. They think, okay, this is going to help it. Then Connie and Mark and Robbie move in. Okay. Robbie and Paul were only 2 years apart, and they were very close. Somehow, Paul had figured out the house was used as a funeral home.
Smart kid.
Within 10 minutes of his siblings arriving, he shared that information with Robbie because
of course,
he's an older brother.
How do you not?
Paul took Robbie downstairs and showed him the morgue. And he made his brother lay down on the embalming table and started spinning it wildly. Robbie was terrified, but tried to act tough because he didn't want to look weak in front of his older brother. And This is kind of the first, very subtle first moments we see a little change in Paul's behavior.
Yeah.
At this point, Karen is still waiting for her husband's job transfer to Connecticut so they can be together. And again, Ed was only home on the weekends. And things got stranger in the house.
Okay.
Karen leaned on her faith to cope with what was going on. One night, Connie was playing in her bedroom, and she saw a figure of a woman watching her. She ran to her mother in terror. Karen said she was trembling with fear and also states this is unlike Connie to be this scared from anything.
Aww.
Karen decides to yell at the boys, thinking they told Connie about the house's past. But Paul and Robbie swear that they did not. At night, the boys didn't get much sleep in the basement, as they could hear voices and see someone walking around in the morgue area of the basement. So this was separated by, it had its own doors. So you walk down to the basement, it's a bedroom for the boys, and there's a separate room with doors on it. That's where the body cooler and all of that stuff is. Those doors are closed and they can see people walking back and forth. It got to the point the boys were so scared they refused to sleep in the basement, and they tried to sleep in the living room. They tell their mother, but she does not believe them and makes a joke that she was going to charge the person rent if they stayed much longer. Finally, Ed gets home for the weekend, and Karen is hoping things will improve. Now, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard. Karen would buy food in bulk and store it in the body cooler downstairs.
No, ma'am.
She asks Robbie to go downstairs and grab a loaf of bread out of the body cooler.
No.
Can you even imagine? Hey, sweetie, can you go downstairs to the basement that terrifies you into the morgue and grab a loaf of bread out of the body cooler for me? Thanks.
Oh, God.
That's crazy.
No, thank you.
Meanwhile, Karen sets the table for breakfast, walks into the kitchen to get biscuits out of the oven. And when she walks back into the dining room, the dishes are gone off of the table. She turns her head to see them all stacked back up in the cabinet. I'm assuming at this point she just thinks she's going crazy.
Yeah, I definitely would at that point as well.
Right. Down in the basement, as Robbie opens the body cooler, he hears a loud, deep voice call for Paul coming from inside it. He slams the door and runs upstairs to tell his mother. Somehow, Karen still doesn't believe there are ghosts in the house and thinks the boys are making it up, even though she is experiencing activity herself. She just didn't believe the spirit world could interact with our world. She went down to the freezer and, of course, didn't hear anything in the freezer.
Of course.
And being the wonderful mother she is, she starts teasing Robbie about it.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Karen and Ed try and get the kids to not be afraid. And Ed asks Paul to set an example for the younger kids and stop putting stories in their heads about ghosts.
Okay. Paul probably doesn't think they're stories, but okay.
Right? Paul's daily cancer treatments slowly drain the family's resources. Paul told Robbie that he would tell his parents the things he saw, and they told him it was just a side effect of his medication. Karen feared that his mental health was declining, but didn't have the financial resources to find a psychiatrist for him, which I call bullshit on.
Yeah.
You find something. There's got to be some resource out there for
something.
You at least talk to the cancer doctors about it and see if they can bring somebody. Yeah. She continued to ignore the signs that evil was lurking in her house. The house was filled with crucifixes, like I said, all over the house. And Karen notices they are disappearing, but can't figure out where they are going.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's a weird, like if crucifixes start disappearing around the house, I got questions.
I got a few. Yeah. Just a couple questions.
Yeah. Paul and Robbie struggle to handle their fear as every night they are seeing apparitions of 4 men and hear them talking to each other in hushed tones. Every night they are waking their parents up in a panic. But when they go downstairs, the apparitions are gone. The parents look for signs that anyone could have gotten into the house, and they don't find any.
That's because no one got into the house. They're already there.
Right. Ed yells at the boys for disturbing them again and orders them back to bed. The boys slept with the lights on, and they were growing very tired of not being believed.
I would imagine, yeah.
When the kids had experiences, they would tell each other so they could be heard and believed because they were all experiencing activities, and they had to draw strength from each other throughout all of this. Karen is sure Paul is hallucinating from his medication and putting ideas in the younger kids' heads. At Paul's next oncology appointment, she asks the doctor, and he tells her there is no way this medication is making him hallucinate. Karen decides he must have a psychological problem causing him to see things. They were worried he'd need another doctor, like I said, because they didn't have the money. When the electric bill arrived, Ed was shocked at how high it was. That's when he found out all of the kids were leaving the lights on at night as they slept. So he removed all of the light bulbs in their rooms.
Oh my God. It's a little dramatic.
Right. After the light bulbs were removed that night, Paul and Robbie were in the basement trying to sleep, and they heard giggling. They woke up and they saw their sister Connie on the stairs, flipping the light switch up and down. And light was coming on and off, even though there weren't any light bulbs.
That's weird.
Connie ran upstairs with Robbie on her heels right behind her. He got to the top of the steps. He saw his mom and he said, "Where's Connie?" Karen said she was upstairs asleep. He told her, "No, she was just downstairs. I was right behind her coming up the stairs." Karen told him again that Connie was asleep for hours and he could go upstairs to check. When he got to her room, she was sound asleep. This, of course, terrified Robbie because whatever it is in the house is now taking the form of family members.
Yeah, I don't like that.
No.
I'm okay seeing other ghosts, but don't start mimicking my family.
Mimics are some of the creepiest.
Yeah. No, thank you. I'm out.
I don't like it. At this point, Paul gives up on trying to get his parents to believe him. While sleeping one night, he hears that voice calling out to him again, and he decides to confront it. What else are you going to do at this point?
I mean, yeah, your parents aren't believing you. You don't really have much else to do.
Right. So he walks into the embalming room, or the morgue, they call it both, and sees a man in a suit with black eyes staring at him.
Creepy.
This marks the moment when a very disturbing change came over Paul. Karen is worried because they used to be very close, but Paul is starting to pull away. I wonder why.
I wonder. Like he's
telling you repeatedly he's being tormented by
exactly,
spirit.
And you're just making fun of him and not believing that this is actually happening.
But now Paul insists on his own bedroom and no longer feared sleeping alone. So they moved Robbie upstairs with his other brother.
Robbie was probably happy.
He was, but it did leave him feeling alienated from Paul.
Okay.
Because they were so close.
Yeah.
At this time, they find out Paul is in remission.
Oh, yay. That's good, at least.
But Paul takes no joy in that news at all.
That's weird.
Since Paul was better, Karen decided to invite her niece Teresa to come live with them, as Teresa's parents were going through a very nasty divorce at the time.
Okay.
Teresa and Paul were always very close.
How old was Teresa?
Teresa was a little bit older than Paul.
Okay.
I'm taking like 18, 19.
Okay. Yeah, that's in the movie, I think she was living with them from day one.
Karen hoped that her presence would help Paul's mental health. Teresa could tell Paul was changing into something darker than his normal self. He shared with her all that he had experienced in the house and that his parents didn't believe him. And it's just getting worse. Now the man would sit on the bed with him at night and tell him bad things about his parents and siblings, telling him to do bad things to them.
No.
Teresa noticed the look in his eyes. It told her that he wasn't him anymore. Paul said the demon got stronger and meaner every night. It got to the point where Paul could not move or speak while this was happening. Sounds like it could be sleep paralysis, but there's a lot more here.
But either way, you're seeing all of these changes in your son after going through this traumatic cancer treatment. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, like you need to get him help.
Yeah.
He's clearly changing. So either
you don't put it on your niece.
Yeah, right. Oh, I'm going to bring my niece here because they're friends and she's going to just make him feel better.
That's what my therapist said. Once I close my practice, just talk to your friends.
Exactly. But I've
been doing that since day one.
Yeah.
I'm
pretty good here to help. I can help a little. But you're also not getting darker and wanting to hurt people, and your complete personality hasn't changed. Yet. If that happens, I'm going to tell you to go back to therapy.
Okay.
I'll be here for you, but I'm also going to tell you to go back to therapy.
You're not going to send me to the Catholic Church?
I'm not going to send you to the Catholic Church. Don't worry.
Good, because I don't want to go there.
Yeah, I won't. Unless you start talking Latin. Unless you start, a random deep voice starts coming out of you where Latin's coming out, we might have to go to the Catholics.
That's fair. That's completely fair. Teresa tells Karen about the dark thoughts that Paul is having and the things that he has told her. Karen thinks this obsession with darkness and the macabre is just because he faced his own mortality at such a young age. Teresa tells Karen the demon says he will do things to hurt him if he doesn't do what he says. One night, They were hanging out in the basement. Paul tries to attack Teresa. She escapes up the stairs screaming while his father Ed had to stop him from actually grabbing her. Karen gives Teresa a rosary to sleep with to help her feel safe.
Oh, okay. That's a great answer, Karen. Thanks.
Right. Because she realizes that Teresa believes there's something evil in the house. I just can't imagine, like, oh, you think there's something? Just here, have a rosary. Have a necklace with beads.
My son tried to hurt you. Have a necklace. Here you go. It'll protect you.
Yeah. Not call the police.
Yeah. Not take the son to a specialist that can help with whatever's going on.
Yeah. Eventually it gets worse and they do try to act to get him help.
Finally.
And that's coming up soon. But Paul and Teresa's relationship is deteriorating, obviously, because he's attacking her.
Yeah. I think that would too.
Finally, Karen takes him to a psychiatrist who is extremely concerned about his behavior. He recommends medication and therapy, but it was already too late.
Yeah, I'd say.
As Teresa lies sleeping in her bed one night, she wakes up to see Paul at the end of her bed, but his eyes are completely black.
Nope.
I don't like it.
Nope, I'm out. I'm leaving. Bye.
He jumps on the bed and attacks her, only to be stopped by Ed running in and pulling him off of Teresa.
If I was Teresa, I'd be like, move me back to my parents' messy divorce. Like, at least no one was attacking me there.
Yeah.
At least physically.
Paul became very violent at this point. Karen and Ed decided they had to call for help, and Paul was taken to the hospital in an ambulance. They leave the kids home alone to head to the hospital themselves because he's been taken away by the ambulance.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at this point, Teresa, you said she was like 18 or 19. Right. So
yeah, she's fine. That's fine. Paul issued them an ominous warning. Now that I'm out of the house, they'll be after you. This made Karen very worried that Paul's mind would never be the same again.
Now she's worried.
Yep. Now she's worried. Still not acknowledging anything that could be in the house.
No.
They come home from the hospital, and Karen goes to toss her keys in the water basin that's by the door.
Yeah.
She tosses it over there, and they hit the floor. The entire water basin and the crucifix above it is gone.
Just gone.
It's gone. She tries to tell Ed about this, so he's exhausted, and now he has to leave for work, so he's really just not interested in hearing anything.
That's fair.
Plus, Ed has a very long commute back to upstate New York.
Yeah.
So after Ed leaves for work, Karen is exhausted, but she has a nagging feeling in the back of her head. What if all of this is real?
Oh, finally.
Mm-hmm.
She's seen the light.
Right.
Or the dark.
She heads downstairs to sit at the bottom of the steps, waiting to see the man that Paul sees, and hoping that she does, because she doesn't want to believe her son is mentally ill. Karen gets very cold and starts to feel a fear and an energy that she can't quite explain. Then Karen does the one thing you should never do. She dares the evil Paul says is in the house to show itself to her.
No, that's not smart, Karen.
No, Karen.
Not if it's evil.
Nope. She tells the evil presence to leave her children alone. She waits at the bottom of the stairs for a while, but never does see anything. She walks back upstairs, turns off the light, and closes the basement door. Ed arrives at work, hoping that it will distract him from what's going on in the home, but he can't stop thinking about Paul. He's very worried about his wife and children being home alone. Ed has no idea that he had so much more to worry about.
Yeah.
Back at home. At the house, Karen decides to take a shower before she settles into bed that night. However, as she is showering, the shower curtain wraps itself around her and is suffocating her. She tries to call out, but is unable to yell very loudly because it's very muffled because of the shower curtain. Yeah. Meanwhile, in Teresa's bedroom, she is sleeping and the blankets start to pull off of her. She pulls them back up in a sleepy state and tries to roll over. But they pull themselves all the way down to the end of the bed, waking her.
No, I've said it before, Kelly. There are two places you're not allowed to bother me. The shower and my bed. And you just said both of these are happening at the same time. Not fair.
I'm sorry. I didn't haunt them, so I can't control it.
No, I'm out.
Teresa runs out of her bedroom and hears Karen's muffled yells in the bathroom. She runs in and is able to get her out of the shower curtain. It is now that Karen and Teresa realize they cannot deny what they just saw. Finally.
Yeah, finally. About time.
Fucking finally, Karen.
Yeah.
Now, I personally would imagine at this point, Karen feels like a pretty big bitch for being such an asshole to Paul the entire time.
I bet.
Karen and Teresa run down to the dining room, and Karen tries to console Teresa because she's so upset. Although she really doesn't know how, because she doesn't even know what she's dealing with. Suddenly, they are surrounded by a dark black presence in the room. Teresa believes she sees a man in the dark cloud on the ceiling. Teresa describes it as if there were 1,000 hands on her, but she can't see them.
No. Gross.
She is so scared she can't speak or scream. It is then that the rosary around her neck starts to lift up in the air and then is ripped apart, and all the beads just go bouncing around the table.
That's not a good sign.
Not at all. Back at Ed's work, he is getting some paperwork done in the small construction trailer that he works in as he hears his truck turn on. It seems as if the evil that attacked Karen and Teresa back at the house has also followed Ed to work. Ed's truck proceeds to drive itself into the trailer as Ed is working. Thankfully, Ed is able to leap out of the way of the truck. He calls Karen back at the house to let her know what happened. Now, the Parkers fear the evil within the house will follow them wherever they go. It's funny that now the parents are concerned about the evil in the house, but when it was the kids, they're like,
Yeah.
I understand you can't indulge every time a kid is scared, but when it's consistent stuff over and over and over again.
Right. Especially when you're also experiencing stuff.
Right.
Like, I know you haven't really said Ed experienced too much, but Karen experienced stuff. And it's one thing
Ed is
to like
gone a lot.
But it's one thing to like chalk up some of the stuff you're experiencing to you just being forgetful or crazy. But then when you also have other people around you experiencing stuff, that's kind of when it's like, okay, maybe something's happening.
Right. At this point, Karen and Ed know they're in over their head.
Good.
They decide to call their priest for help. They hope he can arrive before it's too late. As the kids camp out in the living room, Robbie is woken up to the sound of Paul's voice calling his name. Obviously, Robbie is confused as Paul was in the hospital at the time.
Yeah, that would be a little confusing.
He gets up to see where it's coming from, and Paul's voice is coming from the basement.
Of course it is.
Saying he needs his help and he needs to please come downstairs. As Robbie is walking towards the basement door.
No, Robbie, run the opposite direction.
He hears a knock at the front door. He answers it, and the priest has finally arrived. Karen is hoping for answers and solutions from the priest. He listens to them intently as they tell him what is happening in the house. The priest tells them he believes them, and now he wants them to forget about it and the activity will stop. I mean, is there a better plan you can think of, Jen? Just forget about it.
No, I mean, that sounds like a great plan. 10 out of 10.
The priest believes that to acknowledge the evil will give the evil strength, and the best defense against evil is to ignore it.
Had Karen explained that she had been doing that for this entire time up till this point, and it did not work?
Well, the kids weren't ignoring.
Fair.
Karen knows that the priest has no idea what he's talking about after the things that she has seen.
Thank you, Karen. Finally, someone knocked some sense into you.
It's very hard to ignore things that are physically attacking you.
Yeah, I agree.
She decides to look for less conventional methods of getting help if the church isn't going to help. A couple of weeks prior to this, she had read an article in the paper about a husband and wife team that were demonologists. Enter Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Yep. Of course they did.
After listening to Karen's experiences, they decided to come over to try and help the family. Lorraine starts to feel a presence when they get in the house, and she starts to walk around. Ed explains to them that that's what she does. Like she'll be sitting there, but if she starts to feel the presence of someone, she will get up and just wander around the house. As Lorraine is walking around the house, she's drawn to the basement.
Shocker.
Particularly the morgue in the basement.
Shocking.
She feels there is a severe demonic infestation in this home.
Infestation. I don't like that word when demonic comes before it. I mean, I don't ever like the word infestation. It's never a good sign. Bugs, demons, both of them can just fuck off. I don't want either of them infesting anything.
No, but I would take ants over demons.
I would too, but I still don't want them.
No, same.
Though if you're asking me if I would take roaches or demons.
Oh, maybe the demons.
Maybe the demons, Kelly. I don't know. Ants I can handle, but roaches, I might pick demons.
Maybe. Lorraine believes that in the morgue in the basement, there is a portal directly to hell.
Oh, fun. You have a house that has a portal directly to hell in it. Great location.
The Warrens let them know the only way for them to get help is to have the Catholic Church officially sanction an exorcism of their home. In order to get help from the Catholic Church, they need to record as much evidence that they can get.
I was about to say the Catholic Church has not been helpful up to this point.
Right. So they need evidence of the voices that they're hearing, pictures that show anomalies in it, or whatever evidence they can capture.
Because we know how easy that is to capture paranormal evidence. It's so easy to do.
But they need to get this to show the Catholic Church that there really is a presence in the home.
Okay.
Feeling as if this is an emergency, the Warrens' research team shows up pretty much right away. And they move into the home to record as much evidence as they can get. To make sure everyone is safe as possible, the Warrens suggest that everyone stay in the same space. The family moves their bedrooms into the living room, where the research team will also be staying, along with occasionally Ed and Lorraine.
Okay.
The Warrens explain to the family that the entity chose Paul as a target because his body was weak from his illness and his treatments were making him very vulnerable.
That makes sense.
With Paul out of the house, the entity would choose the next most vulnerable person, which was Karen.
Interesting.
She had been through a lot of psychological stress throughout the entire ordeal of Paul's illness.
Yeah, it's interesting that it was Karen and not like the other brother.
Mm-mm. But Karen was also dealing with a lot of guilt for not believing Paul.
Good, as she should.
Right. While talking to the Warrens in the living room, Karen was thrown back onto an ottoman, like laying down over the ottoman. She felt as if her neck was swelling up and that her body was being contorted into strained positions. She felt all the negative human emotions you could possibly feel, but the one that bothered her the most was the hopelessness. The Warrens team jumped into action, praying over Karen using rosaries and holy water and other blessed objects that they believe is their only defense in attacks like these. Eventually, the attacks seemed to subside. Karen states that when she got back to her body, they said she had been gone for 8 hours.
Oh my God.
It makes you wonder if she was experiencing maybe the torment of hell.
Yeah, that's crazy.
As the researchers slept on air mattresses in the living room, and this is really weird, the mattresses themselves seemed to be breathing, and they seemed to have a heartbeat.
No, thank you.
Yeah. You could see them moving up and down as people were laying on them. Even the experienced researchers were nervous in this home.
Fair. I would be too.
They felt unprepared because of how big the evil was. And the evil wants to isolate its victims because that's when they're the most vulnerable.
Makes sense.
One night, John, who was the head of the Warrens research team, snuck into the other room right next to the living room so he could dictate the events of the day. As he sat there, the room started to get very cold. Being experienced in the field, John knew that when the room gets cold, the energy is being drawn out of the room, and that's when things are about to start to happen. He started to call out to others in the house. Everyone, the parents, the kids, the Warrens, but nobody was responding to him. John knew the evil in the house had something in mind only for him. And I don't understand this at all. But he walked around the house, eventually heading to the basement.
Oh, of course he did.
As he stood at the top of the basement stairs and looked down, he could see a man in a suit with black eyes at the bottom of the stairs staring at him. Suddenly, the man in the suit became a large fireball that shot up the stairs directly at John.
No.
John states that the terrifying events of that night were so bad, he will never forget about them. And it was at that time he packed up and left, refusing to work on the case any longer.
I mean, fair. I would too.
This is the head, though. This is like the head researcher dude.
Doesn't matter. Fireball comes up at me from the bottom of the stairs. Nope, I'm good. I'm out.
Right.
I'm not coming back. Find somebody else.
Right.
I've moved on.
Well, as we talked about in the Exorcist episode that we did, the exorcist has to approach each case with a large degree of skepticism. So they don't rule some as a demonic presence if it could be something physical or mental going on with the people themselves.
Yeah.
The Warrens were able to convince the diocese in the area to investigate to see if an exorcism was needed. The church sends out Father Frank to investigate. Father Frank spoke to the family and listened to their experiences and looked at the evidence that the family had collected. And ultimately, the Catholic Church did decide to grant the exorcism.
Thankfully. About time.
The church sent Father Richardson to the home to perform the exorcism. But as he was preparing for it, Father Frank approached him and told him, be very careful in this home.
Ominous.
That's good. Yeah, from another priest. Father Richardson's first task was to cleanse the home. Unfortunately, in doing so, he provoked the demon.
Of course.
As he entered the basement to bless it, Karen was behind him. And she could see that something was pulling his shirt, like out from his body and then over to the side. Father Richardson turned his head and she saw the look on his face, but he didn't say a word to her and proceeded to bless the basement.
Okay.
Not wanting to give the demon any strength, he ignored it. But the demon does not want to back down.
Yeah, I bet demons don't want to be ignored.
Yeah. In order for an exorcism to be successful, it relies heavily on the faith of the priest and the people that are present for the exorcism. I'd be screwed.
Same.
This being the Parkers' home, it meant their faith, along with Ed and Lorraine Warren's faith, had to be strong. It was going to be a fight between good and evil. To begin, Father Richardson sets up a small altar, opens up the Bible, lights a white candle, starts to pray over the house and the people present in the home. The entity was prepared for battle. As he is praying, he notices the flame on the white candle blows out on its own. The room starts to shake and the books on the bookshelf start to fall off. But the more they prayed, the more it seemed to provoke the demon. Karen is then lifted out of her chair and thrown against the wall and is pinned there.
Oh, no.
But however evil and dangerous and violent the spirit got, everyone in the room was told to ignore it. Karen eventually is released from being up against the wall. She slides down to the floor and then just gets up and walks her happy ass over to the chair she was sitting in originally and sits down.
Okay.
It's wild to me.
Yeah.
That's when Teresa was picked up by her neck off the floor and was dangling in the air as the demonic entity started strangling her. And again, everyone in the room ignored it. Eventually, it releases her and she sits back down, not saying a word about it.
Okay. Yeah, I guess. Sure. That's a decision.
Right. In the end, the exorcism did work.
That's good.
The family and the others present at the time credit their faith for its effectiveness. Even though the exorcism worked, the Parker family decided to leave this home shortly after the exorcism was over.
Yeah, I agree. I also would have left.
Yeah. Paul was released from the hospital in the spring, and his cancer never returned.
That's good.
Yeah. He was able to forgive his parents for not believing him. That probably took a lot of therapy.
That did probably take a lot of therapy.
The family states it's the worst thing they've ever been through, and they are unwilling to talk about it anymore from that interview.
Okay. I mean, fair. I can see like, okay, we're going to do a tell-all. This is it. End of story. And then we're never going to talk about it again.
And that brings us to the end of this episode about the true story behind the movie, A Haunting in Connecticut.
If you loved what you heard, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen. Your support means the world to us, and the more you review and subscribe and rate us, then the more listeners we get, and the more we can bring you spooky tales.
Absolutely. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Not My Ghost Podcast and on Facebook at Not My Ghost, Not My Problem. We post updates, photos, and more.
And if you want even more ghostly content, please consider joining our Patreon. We have some wonderful exclusive perks for our supporters, all 3 of them. We have some great mini episodes that we are planning on releasing this month. Well, by the time this episode comes out, we would have already released one of them, and the other one will be coming shortly. So if you want to hear those mini episodes, you got to become a Patreon donor.
Right. I want to point out, it's been a while since we shouted out Danny, our very first patron. So I just wanted to say, hi, Danny.
Yes, of course. And if you have ever experienced a demonic possession or really any paranormal activity or experience, you can email us that story at notmyghostpodcast@gmail.com, and you will probably hear it featured on a future episode. We are waiting to do our first paranormal postcards episode where we read the stories that you all email to us, but we don't have enough stories to do one yet. So please send us all your spooky stories, and it'll probably make it into an episode right away because, again, we don't have enough stories right now.
Right. Please, please, please send those stories in.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this disturbing exploration of the real story behind the movie A Haunting in Connecticut. Remember, as you walk through the halls of an old funeral home, keep this in mind.
If it's not your demonic entity,
it's not your problem.
Until next time, stay spooky.
And stay skeptical.